afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for sticking around to what I consider a very important and valuable aspect of being a patient advocate or advocate for the cause, to bring you more awareness regarding C. diff. So the presentation that we have before you is understanding the media environment. So why am I standing here before you? Well, I'm a senior media relations specialist. I work at Tonic Communications based in Philadelphia. And it's really an honor and privilege to be here before you just to talk about something that I absolutely love and have a passion for, which is the media. The next slide. A little bit of an overview just regarding my background and experience. I used to be a television anchor, reporter, and producer. I worked for an NBC affiliate in upstate New York, and I worked for an independent station, a CNN associate affiliate, up in the Philadelphia region, more so in the suburbs. And then I did some freelancing independent work in Philadelphia for a business-focused television program set for the internet called Career TV. So media engagement, extremely valuable and important in order to spread awareness to the masses, whether it's for local television exposure, local print, or even on a national standpoint. You want to make sure that your voice is heard. You each have a story to tell. Either you have been impacted personally by C. diff, you have lost somebody due to this terrible, terrible disease. There's a reason why you have decided to be so forward and honest and truthful about something that is not amongst the norm of many diseases out there that are gaining national attention constantly. So you have a harder battle, but there are options to be successful and to come out as winners. So here's a little bit of a breakdown regarding the media. So there are 4 aspects to media: earned media, owned, shared, and paid. So we'll start with the first, which is earned media. Earned media is the result of media relations efforts to gain coverage in print, TV, radio, and online. What that essentially means is you reaching out to a reporter, to an editor, to a television producer, sharing your story, letting them know why it is important for them to give you the time of day to talk about something that's important in your life. That's okay. That's earned media. You earned the media coverage by just reaching out. Owned media. Owned media is content created and hosted on controlled channels. So for example, similar to what the Peggy Lillis Foundation is doing, they've hired a freelance videographer. They are going to be coordinating video content affiliated with this foundation. They own the rights to the video content. They can distribute it at will. They own it, they can do what they want, push it out through their website, through social media channels. Shared. Shared media is owned and earned content circulated by general public through print or social media aspects. Essentially what that means is if it's gained and generated through television or through print, social media is a wonderful and fabulous thing, which was very well executed and explained today during the summit. When it's shared, that means I can tweet about it. I can post it up on Facebook. I can call my neighbor and say, oh my gosh, you have to go onto WFMZ TV's website and take a look at this fantastic story that they did. It's coverage that has been exposed, and it's the audiences that are sharing the content. Paid. Paid media, or what we like to call paid integration, is the message and content that's placed in front of an audience for a fee. So essentially, a lot of paid integration that you will find in print, especially in television on a national scale, you give them the dollar, they'll put what you want up on television or written in the press on a national standpoint and scale. So if you're coming from a foundation standpoint, you might have raised the dollars to be able to get 60 minutes to do a 2 to 4 minute segment regarding C. diff, and that's because you have the dollar backing. But that's not to say if you don't have the funds that your story still isn't worthwhile. Sometimes in gaining exposure on a national standpoint is just a little bit more challenging because per day, they're probably at least hearing from 400 people stating why it's important that they should be featured. So that's why sometimes as an agency, we advise paid integration because essentially it's guaranteed exposure on multiple outlets for a national to international exposing range. Next slide, please. Media relations, an opportunity for collaboration. It's a two-way street. We help them because we give them content. Producers and editors need it. The news is 24/7. They have to fill it with content. And simultaneously, we are sharing the messages that we feel so passionate about with the masses and to the audiences that we want to expose the messages to. The reporter's objectives. When reporters receive emails for potential news story-worthy content, they're looking at several things, and here are a few. They want to make sure that they can communicate newsworthy topics. They're going to be looking at your pitch and your email and stating, why is this relevant today? Why should I feature this now? What's the important factor? Why can't I do a story about this 3 years from now? Doesn't seem like C. diff is going anywhere. It's just something to think about. Connecting with audiences. They're going to see how this will resonate with the audiences that they are reaching from a local, national standpoint, or if it's from print, from their readers. Are readers really going to appreciate this story? Is this worthwhile for them to pitch to their editors? Providing context. What type of new information can you state that the reporter or the editor or the producer has ever heard of? If you have new content to back up the essence of your story of why you want to share it, you will be setting yourself up for better, successful rates. Spokesperson objectives. As you can see, from a spokesperson standpoint, you want to make sure that you're sharing a unique story. Your authentic story is unique enough. You just need to hone in on those key elements and aspects that really make and grasp the reporter's attention to listen and to pay attention, to make them feel, she has a point. You know what? I think I should do something about this and help them. Connecting with readers, connecting with audiences, as we expressed before. That's extremely vital and important. Because ultimately, as a patient advocate or as a caregiver, an advocate at large, foundation, you want to be able to connect with a variety of people, not just people that know about C. diff, but to be honest, you want to contact all of those that have no idea what C. diff is, to warn them and to prepare them. God forbid if something were to impact their lives the way that it's impacted yours. Increasing awareness falls along the same lines as connecting with readers and audiences. Introduction to pitching. So some of you might not be familiar or know how to go about how to approach an editor, how to approach the media. And so that is why we are here to give you a little bit of a how-to. First bullet point we have to our basic rundown, targeted media list. You can create an easy media list through an Excel document. You want to know the area demographic that you're reaching out to. So television news affiliates that are in your local area. Okay? Go onto their website. Research the reporters. Take a look at some of the reporters that may have covered health stories in the past. Those are the types of people that you want to reach out to. The pitch, relevant background and facts, goes into what I was discussing earlier. Your story is unique, you need to share it. That is your pitch. If you also have concrete facts that are relevant to news and information that's being pushed out regarding C. diff research, if you can incorporate that into your pitch, that's what's going to be the now factor of why a reporter should do a story about this now versus a year from now. Media relationships. You might hear back from someone in the media and they might say, you know what, Kim, thank you very much for sharing this information, but I'm just swamped with other deadlines right now. I don't have the time. Consider it an accomplishment that a reporter actually got back to you. Keep that relationship and that connection. Acknowledge them back in a response saying, I completely understand, it's unfortunate that you can't share my story at this time, but I would love to touch base with you again, and it would be an honor just to tell and share with you my story because I think it is newsworthy. Building that relationship. You don't want to burn bridges with the media. You don't want to come back and be like, oh, I'm not reaching back out to that reporter again, they ignored me, blah, 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 and make excuses, because honestly, when it comes to local and even national news, they might be interested in your content, but if there's breaking news and their producer's like, no, go out to that fire, I'm canning your health story, you have no control over that. You can't call the producer up or the editor and be like, oh, please reconsider so this can air. You have no control of that situation, but you do have control of maintaining the relationships. So don't be afraid or don't get yourself all down and disheartened if, in fact, the media can't acknowledge your story right now. Keep going at it. And another piece of advice that I would like to share, if you don't hear back from the media within 3 days after you initially reach out to them through email and through telephone, what I always like to do through email is re-forward them the initial message that you sent to them and shoot off a quick little note and say, hi Marissa, this is Kimberly just touching base with you. I just wanted to make sure that you got this email because I think this is really interesting content and I thought it would be up your alley. At your earliest convenience, if you can get back in contact with me, I would appreciate it. It gives them the power of like, oh, okay, let me not ignore this, or they might have just easily just missed over and skimmed over your email or hit delete by accident because they get a slew of other PR pitches and other things. So give them the benefit of the doubt that they just didn't see it. Next. Tailoring an approach to a specific audience and demographic. There's a difference between online and social media versus traditional. So your traditional news is the news that cranks out. You get a daily newspaper, on weekends editions, Monday through Friday. You get your broadcast programs on their early morning sunrise editions, to your noon broadcast, to your evening news broadcast, the 5 to 6, and you get the 10s and the 11s. It goes on and on and on. News is a 24-hour cycle. Online and social media news, there's no pressing deadline. Anytime that they have story, newsworthy content, just with the click of the mouse, boom, they can post something. Whereas versus traditional media, many times, especially with television, you actually have to sit and wait for the 5 o'clock news, the 11 o'clock news. So there's like the pros and cons with both aspects of media. Consumer media versus trade and professional media. Your consumer media is going to be the media for your everyday person. So at every type of consumer media, it can be anything from men's health, to First for Women. It's publications that the general masses would typically pick up and read. And so you might find health stories and content in there, but the way that they frame the stories are generalized based off of their audiences. So how do they break down something that is complicated and make it easy and understandable? So when you are pitching to the consumer media, you want to just keep that into account of how you can make your story and how you can see it a little bit more understandable that people can at least place themselves in your shoes. Trade and professional media are to the doctors, HCPs, and to the nurses, those within the medical field that you can throw out some more technical terms and language and they will understand because that given publication, it speaks their language. Broadcast media versus print media. Whenever you are pitching to broadcast, if you can ever provide them with video or links, I highly recommend that because broadcast media is a visual media. So it needs to show visuals in order to tell the story. Print media, more times than not, you can just send them the pitch without photos, and more times than not, they would acknowledge it, depending on if they do have the time or if they are interested in taking a look at the content that you have to say. But if you do have photographs to provide them, I would recommend providing print media with photographs as well, because if in fact they do schedule an opportunity to speak with you, they will send a photographer with them, but at least they know from a visual standpoint from a printing and press-wise, what they can kind of mold and create. Evergreen stories versus breaking news. That was the scenario that I gave you of why is your content and why is your story relevant now versus a year from now. Evergreen stories can be, stories and from your angles and your pitching. It's like, oh, I'll send it to this outlet today and maybe that outlet next week. There's no hard deadline versus breaking news. Breaking news is if there is that stat, anything that you can link and hone in with seeded information and content that's relevant right now and might be a hot topic, that's what you can link your story to. That's what makes it breaking news. Becoming a spokesperson. Becoming a spokesperson for your cause and for what you're passionate about. You can't fake it. Reporters can see right through that. Goes back to being your unique self, telling your unique story. Being a spokesperson is a huge responsibility. Not only can you just rely on your own personal story, but it's important to know the basic facts of why you are speaking to that reporter right here, right now. It's a call to action. Knowing your story. You're speaking from experience. Be able to provide examples. So many of you that I had the privilege of speaking with, sharing your stories with me of how CEDAW has impacted your lives. I asked you specifically, how has it changed your life? Be honest and be candid. List those examples. That's what they want to hear. They don't want to hear the generalized story. They want to know specifics. Provide them with those examples. Use quotable language. If you're coming from a place of honesty, the quotable language is just going to spew out of you. Don't think too hard. Just be honest. Practice your key points, your key talking points. Sometimes what I like to advise those that are about to approach and meet the media, per se, that have never had any type of media experience whatsoever. I always tell them to write on a little index card, maybe 5 bullet points of important information that they wish to express during the time that they're going to be engaging in a conversation with the media. It doesn't have to be a full long sentence, but 5 points. It can be easily my story, how it's affected me, my passion behind my advocacy, so on and so forth. That way, before your interview, you can take a look at that index card and be like, right, I'm focused. I do know what I want to say and speak about. I'm not going to feel stumped. Determining the agenda. Know the media outlet and prepare accordingly. Are you going to be speaking to a reporter that's from a television news affiliate? Are you going to be speaking with somebody that works for a local paper or from a national standpoint? Are you going to be speaking from somebody from the Times or the Washington Post? Is it going to be in person or over the phone? Anytime that you have a broadcast opportunity, 99% of the time, and I will guarantee this to you, they're going to want to see you face to face. Okay? So if you are a little bit more timid and hesitant to go on camera, if that's not within your comfort zone, that's fine. My recommendation would be is to target specifically just print media, because you don't necessarily have to see the reporter face to face. More times than not, you can actually conduct the interview over the phone. But in person, I always recommend in person is better, whether it is television or print, because you make the eye connection. You feel that emotion, because from a writing standpoint, a journalist is going to be pulling from that. They can't really sense that over the phone, truly. Television and radio, is it live or is it tape? Sometimes in television, you might have the opportunity of being a part of the noon broadcast where it's taped live and they're going to do a sit-down interview segment with you, sitting right next to the couch, next to your favorite television personality, and right then and there, live, you'll have the opportunity to share your story and to speak those important key points. Or is it taped? Like we just did back there. It wasn't live. If you messed up, that's okay. Focus, regather your thoughts. Share your story. Where? Sometimes, from television, they might have you come into studio, or more times than not, the reporter and the photographer and the videographer are going to actually go to the location of maybe where your event summit is going to be held, or to your home. They'll ask you where you would like to meet. And so you can dictate where would you like to meet them. If you're comfortable having them in your home, invite them into your home. Gives them that sense of community, especially from a local news standpoint. That's what they're all about. reaching out to their community, to their audiences. So just be prepared for that. If they ask you, oh, can we look to your home? You're like, oh, okay. How long is the segment? Television rule of thumb. A television package segment of the story is not going to be over 1 minute and 45 seconds. So you might be sitting down with a reporter and they are going to have information that's 10 minutes long, but it's the reporter's job and responsibility to condense it. So some of you that might have had opportunities to speak with television journalists would see the segment and tell all of your friends and your family, and it's only 1 minute and 45 seconds, and you were on television 3 times, probably with the equivalent of 20 seconds. You're like, I said so much more, they cut so much out. They only have a certain amount of time, so that's having short, condensed key points. It's being able just to really conquer and get the points in and using the quotable language. That's where that comes in. Print, however, they typically, based on their word count, they might have more liberties to put more of your quotations in a print piece. So you might just notice the differences between the two. Being able to secure questions and topics in advance, that's like the dream. You're like, yeah, so what type of questions are you going to be asking me prior to us meeting? Because I kind of would like a little bit of a heads up. Depending on the reporter, the producer, or the editor's schedule that day, they might be able to shoot you a quick response of, here's a general idea of what you will be asked, but don't put all your eggs in one basket thinking that you're going to be getting questions in advance. That's why it's just important to do your homework, do your prep work, see what type of stories have been released by certain reporters. It doesn't hurt to ask, but don't be a nag about it. You just ask them once and they say, we might be able to help you out, I'll get back to you, acknowledge them, say, okay, that would be extremely helpful if I were provided questions. If not, no worries. Make it conversational. If you make yourself easy and approachable to the media, they're going to want to come back and connect with you again, and you can be their go-to source. Tips and reminders. So just kind of rehashing everything that I just discussed in some of the previous slides. That's just going to help you and benefit you when you have opportunities to speak with the media. You want to take control of the situation. The reporter might be asking you the questions, but they can't write or produce any content without knowing what you're going to say. You have control. Use that to your advantage. Bridge back to key messages. So for example, if a reporter seems to go a little bit off kilter to the direction of how you want the interview to go, know how to hook them back in. Be like, you know what, I feel like we're going a little bit off track here, but this is something that I'm really passionate about and what I would love to discuss with you about. Redirect it, bring it back in. Understanding blocking, understanding certain language, knowing essentially the order of your key messages is extremely important. So you don't get lost or confused or feel like you're just rambling on for hours and you're like, what the heck am I talking about right now? Know when to redirect a question, as I mentioned. Anticipate those tough questions. Reporters might ask you, what is C. diff? Know how to respond in your own layman's terms. How would you describe C. diff to somebody that has no idea what it is? Anticipate the tough questions. Anticipate some of the emotional questions, some of the questions that might set up a little trigger in you. If you get emotional during an interview, never apologize. Don't apologize. It's your story. Why are you apologizing for sharing something so personal? There's no need to do that. There's no need. Turning negatives into positive. Something that has impacted everyone in a traumatic and great way. You're all here because you're taking a negative situation and making it a positive as being advocates. Something that has deeply impacted you. You are doing good in society, being able to share your story. It's a positive. Transitions. This goes to hooking it back in, taking control of the interview. Perhaps the most valuable interview response technique is the bridge or transition statement. Essentially what this is knowing the certain language of how to look at a reporter and say, quote, "That's an interesting question, but let me remind you that," okay, the back end. "That's a really important point, but X, Y, and Z." Before we run out of time, I just would like to add, sometimes you might encounter reporters where their last question for you is there anything else in addition that you want to add before we wrap up an interview? That might be the gift question, like we like to call it here in media relations. It's a gift, it's your gift. They're giving you the floor officially. You the opportunity to be able to state and close out the remaining part of the interview. Sometimes other reporters, they will do that. Once you're done talking, they're like, okay, I have everything that I have, thank you so much. If that is the case, create your own gift question. Plug it in, be like, actually, I do have something else I want to add. Just so hang on, let's not pull up, let's not pull up everything. Don't put your pen away. You don't go get your car keys. Don't go ahead. Just wait. I have something else to add. Interview checklist. So here's a few little bullet points regarding how to prep yourself to your most successful interview with the media. Speak in a conversational, upbeat tone. You're passionate about what you're doing. There's a reason why you're engaging the media. Show it. Be personable. Give brief but complete answers, as we discussed earlier. Keep calm. Keep calm. The information that you have to share is great. You know, it's common that if you see the lights and the videographer is getting close and he's just like, let me rearrange your mic, it might kind of make you feel a little bit violated, especially if you have like a personal space bubble. I'm like, okay, someone's touching me right now. just keep calm. They're doing their job to set you up for success. All you need to do is just focus on the key points that you want to state, and you will be successful. Be honest. Comes back to telling a unique story and coming from a place of authenticity. Be honest. Your story is unique and individual to you. The person that you're sitting right next to, you guys have similar components, but different stories. Be yourself, be honest. Broadcasting tips. Maintain eye contact with the reporter, not with the camera. More times than not, the reporter will say, during the entire interview, you're going to be looking straight at me, don't even bother looking at the camera. Sometimes they'll be like, okay, we ready to go, we ready to roll, great. Okay, first and last name, say it, spell it, where are you from? And then you're like, oh, where do I go? They didn't advise me what to do. Look at them the entire time like you're having a conversation. After a reporter asks you a question, pause. Regain your thoughts. Think about what you're going to say. Then state it. Just because a reporter asks you a question doesn't mean right off the bat automatically you have to have the answer. You can think about it. Use that pause. Think about what you're going to say. Restate your answer from a clear perspective. So there might be some times where you feel like you're going a little bit off course. You can take a pause and say, actually, I'm going to restate what I just said to you. You can do that. It doesn't have to be perfect all the time. Especially if you catch yourself, say, actually, can I restate that? They're going to say, by all means, yeah, go right ahead. Wear solid colors, not prints. Avoid wearing white. So I would never wear my white jacket if I was anchoring. I'm wearing a really pretty blue right underneath. I would wear that because blue is really nice. These pants have black and white in it. That's fine because it has black in it as well. But never just all white-based colors, especially for television, because it's really hard from a filming standpoint to grasp what type of colors are surrounding, and you might look a shade blue when you really look white. You know, it's just a whole different element. So I always like to advise people don't wear white on camera. And whether you're on television or you're going to be speaking with a member of the press, look presentable, look your best. It doesn't mean that you have to go to a hair salon and get your hair all done and be like, okay, I'm gonna be talking to the media, like, take my picture. Look presentable. I have to say Sunday best. You, as being a patient advocate, you're representing yourself and you're representing so many others that are walking the same walk as you. You want to do them proud. You all look nice, look presentable. Friendly reminders. Silence is okay. What does that mean? Well, if you're done talking, just stop talking. If a reporter is writing something down, or if you're having a phone interview with them and you hear silence on the other end, don't feel like you have to fill in the silence gap. Because then you're like, no, 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 no. And they're just writing things down, collecting their thoughts. Silence is okay. When you're done speaking, you can stop talking. Never wing it. Know your key points prior to an interview. You don't want to feel humiliated or embarrassed or feel like, oh my gosh, I had the opportunity to speak to the media and I blew it. I didn't talk about any of my talking points. Do your homework, be prepared. Know when not to answer a question, which is very important. If you don't know an answer to a question a reporter asks you, just state to them, I don't know the answer to the question, but I can recommend somebody who might be able to answer that for you. Come from a place of honesty. If you don't know, you don't know. It's okay. It's not the end of the world. It's going to be part of the reporter's job then to find the appropriate source to be able to speak to somebody regarding maybe some of the more technical questions that they might have. Nothing is off the record. As much as we like to think and say, off the record, X, Y, and Z, when you're speaking with a reporter, you're speaking with a reporter, period. Unless they actually put the notepad aside, they turn off the camera, you guys go grab drinks afterwards, and you guys become buddies, that's when you know it's safe to say. But when they're doing their job, they're doing their job. It's not off the record. So don't be bashing anybody else or saying, oh, this foundation's not so great, but this one is even better. Be kind. I know, I'm sorry, Christian. Be kind. Be kind. Because little would you maybe figure out that potentially they might be doing a story about why this foundation is better than that one, and then it can cause us all like media war frenzy, and we, you know, publicity's publicity, but you don't want to be involved in that. That's just setting yourself up for not so good publicity down the line. Don't expect to be able to review the content, okay? Don't expect to be able to see the journalist's story prior to print. More times than not, you will come across really nice reporters that be like, hey, would you like to take a look at this prior to me sending it to my editor? That's wonderful. When you're given that opportunity, it's golden to keep that connection with that reporter, with that editor, because that means they really value what they're about to put out into the media. Be available and flexible. I can't tell you how many times, unfortunately, there have been missed opportunities with the media because people haven't made themselves available, and it's become more of a nuisance and difficult coordinating schedules. Reporters and editors are not going to want to deal with confusion and with constant conflict. If a reporter acknowledges you and says, yeah, I want to speak to you at Tuesday at 5, if you have dinner plans at Tuesday at 5, rearrange your schedule to have your dinner plans at 6:30. You're pitching to the media for a reason, so if it's in your power to not ruin it, don't. If you can change and rearrange something, do it to make it easy for you. You don't want to make it difficult for an editor or for a reporter to reject you. If you're easily flexible and you're like, oh, you know, they're just really nice and they're just really accommodating, actually, I do have the time, so yeah, let me just quickly go over and interview them. It can be for them being like no big deal, but for you, it's like, oh my gosh, I have a media hit, this is amazing, I can't wait. Here are 2 examples we're going to show you from broadcast media hits. One based out of, I think it's a CBS affiliate in Boston. It was a patient profile regarding a C. diff patient advocate, and also during this piece, the reporter was also able to interview a doctor. So we'll show that first example.
More than lucky these days.
News over a lot. I get emotional. It's called blessed.
For more than a year, he was deathly ill. It wasn't the colorectal cancer, but the bacterial infection he picked up during his cancer surgery.
It's like getting in a ring to an opponent you can't see, and this opponent is kicking you from one side of the ring to the other side of the ring.
C. diff, or Clostridium difficile, is a potentially deadly infection common in hospitals around the globe. 500,000 U.S. cases a year. Dr. Carolyn Alonso is an infectious disease specialist at Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center.
Patients in the hospital tend to be more vulnerable to this infection. They're oftentimes elderly, with weakened immune systems, on systemic antibiotics, so they're a susceptible population, and then the spores are present.
But now Beth Israel has hope that things could soon change. The Boston Hospital is part of a worldwide vaccine trial aimed at stopping the spread before it starts. And that means at-risk patients could get vaccinated at the start of their hospital stay.
It's going to be immense because once this settles in, this god-awful disease, there's no way to treat it. You can dance around it, try and hope, but it's very difficult because it gets a foothold on you.
The study will last about 3 years, is completely voluntary. Kate Merrill, WBZ News.
You can just quickly pause once you have a chance. The next video that we're going to watch is of Ryan Stevens, an IBD and Crohn's disease patient advocate. And so we wanted to show two different examples of two very different types of rare disease conditions that are not popular amongst the general population, but have generated successful media hit opportunities. Ryan's example that we're just about to show you is a live interview segment on, I believe it's on Erie's Fox Station's morning show. So live means live, present, right then and now, streaming live. So.
If it's quiet, you put the mic by the speaker?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Absolutely.
Good idea.
So you're swimming across Lake Erie.
That's correct.
And what's the cause behind this?
I'm doing it to raise awareness for IBD, which is inflammatory bowel disease. Diseases, there's two of them. There's Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis.
And this is something that you're unfortunately is familiar with.
Yes, I have Crohn's disease. I've had it for 5 years now, and it's been, in the beginning, it was quite a struggle, and now I just want to try to help raise awareness about the diseases.
Right. And this is you're a swimmer all your life, or in a collegiate swimmer, correct?
Yeah, I swam 4 years in college. I swam at the University of Toledo, actually.
Now, with you being an athlete, I'm sure that you probably watch what you eat, but how does having Crohn's disease affect your diet?
For me, it doesn't really affect my diet. Most of my activity was in my large bowel, and for people who have it in their small bowel, they do have issues where they might not absorb nutrition from their food, so they do have to have or keep a close eye on what they're eating and how, what they're taking in.
And obviously, when you were diagnosed, I would imagine there was a lot of weight loss, and so you weren't probably able to swim for a while, or?
Yeah, when I was first diagnosed, it was 2009, and I basically lived on my couch for about 2 years straight.
Wow.
So I just, about down to 120 pounds, actually.
Goodness, wow, what a tough time to get through. What made you decide to get back in the pool and decide you were ready again to start that heavy physical activity?
I was sitting on my couch. I've always been an active person, being a former swimmer, and I was, in 2008, I was trying to get back into shape, actually, and then along came Crohn's, and I, literally couldn't do anything. And so I want to try to, there's 1.4 million people in America that live with an IBD, and I want to try and help raise awareness for them. And swimming is just something that comes natural for me. So.
Well, I see some video here of you actually in the pool doing what you do best, but obviously swimming in the pool and swimming in Lake Erie are very different, right?
It's a lot different, yeah. I've been watching the weather this entire week, and every time I look at it, it changes. So
It does, yeah.
The winds are going to be because that will cause the waves. You know, you're swimming in a pool, it's nice, no waves. So, but the wind could be an issue. You know, we got to watch the waves. If they get too big, we might have to come back another day. So it's all dependent on the weather.
And how long do you expect this is going to take? When do you start and when do you expect to be finished?
Sure. It's I'm hoping about 12 hours.
Wow.
It's a 24-mile swim, and it's from Long Point, which is in Ontario, Canada, and then it'll be basically straight south to northeast Pennsylvania.
Wow. This is going to be a huge undertaking. We certainly wish you the best in this. And is there any way people can kind of learn more about the disease and also more about what you decided to do?
Absolutely. I have a blog, which is crohnsguy.com, and on there it explains a little bit of what I've experienced with the disease. And as well, there's a page at the top called Lake Erie Swim, and it tells people more about what we're going to be undertaking.
Yeah. Okay, well, good luck to you.
Thank you.
Hopefully the weather will hold out for you.
I'm hoping, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
So those are just two different examples of television media opportunities that you might be fortunate to be involved with. Oh, don't worry, you can. So for right now, initially we were thinking that we might have time to do a little bit of a breakout session, but many of you have actually already conducted and done interviews with. So I would like to use this opportunity as an open floor conversation for questions. If any of you want to share about your experiences or tips and advice of when engaging with the media, or if you have any questions for me, the mic is yours. The floor is open.
I had some experience that I wanted to share. One thing is, the one thing that you wish you didn't say is what they're probably going to use. So be really careful not to say something, like you said. And the other thing is, I find reporters who I get to know will call me and say, a report came out, tell me every detail about the report, almost plant the words that they want me to say. And I have to do my own research and put it in my own words, but I find that I'm grateful for that, as long as I know it's not against anything I believe in. So what is do you see that? Is that a common occurrence?
It is, because more times than not, in the start and beginning of the day, they will have a morning, evening, afternoon news meeting. They're going to figure out what topics they would like to discuss for the day, what are newsworthy content, things of that nature. So many of times, a reporter might get the clearance to be able to speak with you regarding new information just released regarding C. diff, and they want to get that patient angle in addition to telling the story. And so their producer already planted the seed as to this is the type of story I want you to tell. And so you might get questions or feed kind of answers that are more in tune with what the reporter has to say. My best advice to you is say your key points. If you don't like the direction of how the interview is going, just say, honestly, I can't really speak to that, but this is what I can speak to. Because either which way, they're going to be able to get their content exposed to the media. So if they need to go to a different source, maybe a professional, a doctor or a nurse who specializes in it, they'll find other resources. But more times than not, a patient's story is something in addition that a journalist is going to want to capture. So they're going to want to speak to an official to get the official response or the official soundbite, because from a legal standpoint, they can't be sued if they're speaking about something, especially if a doctor is stating certain facts. But from a patient perspective, they can't do anything about it. It's your story. This is what the patient says. They can't do anything. So a lot of times it's just to kind of cover their own skin. So as I said before, if you don't feel comfortable with the direction it's going, just speak to the points that you can speak to. Anybody else?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention and see what your thoughts are. I've had a number of print interviews, and most of the reporters that I've spoken with have done a great job quoting me correctly. But recently I had a situation where a reporter who I had never spoken to before misquoted me. Like, he took parts of things I said, took things out of context, and the words just weren't mine for the most part.
Did you not have any interaction with the reporter? Like,
We had a decent phone call.
a decent phone call, okay.
Yeah, once it was done, basically, is what I felt. Was there anything really to do about it?
My best piece of advice is if that is to happen, don't go to the reporter, go to the boss, go to the editor. Say, hey, I was misquoted, this is what I actually said, because more times than not, they might actually, especially because a lot of print media is also posted online on the web, because that's how print media is trying to survive, because nowadays we're so in touch with our mobile devices that it's very uncommon for people to sit and pay the money to hold and read a newspaper. So they might be able to fix the quote and make the changes online, so it's worthwhile to reach out and come from a respectable approach. I'm really grateful that, so-and-so was able to, felt the need to speak with me about this, but unfortunately, I think they misquoted me, and this is how I wanted to approach it. So just come from a place of, expect that they didn't hear you correctly versus deciding to omit certain truths and then, mold it into a way that they actually wanted.
Yeah, I can address that point. I think one of the most, and I can't even remember where I learned this, but one of the most helpful things that I've had in dealing with the press was, I always ask them after the interview if I can verify quotes, and 9 times out of 10, they'll say, yes. I heard it once, Wall Street Journal reporter said, yeah, we're the Wall Street Journal, we don't do that, but she did fine, but I found that if I didn't do that, usually they'll let you read the whole story, and there will be mistakes in the whole story, and you can point those out, as well as your quotes, but otherwise you can be misquoted, or maybe something that you said you'd like to rephrase, and you can do that at that juncture, so it's just really helpful.
Thanks for sharing. And anybody else before we wrap up?
So we had 2 instances that I think are worth noting and highlighting, and the first is fairly early on, and I think Chris will remember this because I made him pull a car over, where there was a story that was coming out about, I think it was about Sanofi's vaccine actually. And the New York Times health reporter contacted me, and we started talking, told him a little bit about the story, this kind of thing. And then he wanted me to, he was basically asking for me to render an opinion about the value of this vaccine. And I told him I could not do that. I'm not a research scientist, I'm not a doctor. It is not our place to decide whether or not an investigational vaccine is. And I mean, this is not even something that I was in contact with Susan or anybody else. It's just, for me, I have no credibility, and the foundation has no credibility to take that kind of position. And so when this story came out, there was no mention of any other thing we talked about. And so sometimes you have to forego a media opportunity because it would be dishonest, or it would put you in a, because, if we say, hey, it's not our business, but this comes back to what Lisa was saying about, advocates aren't doctors. But at the end of the day, not only would we, my opinion on the vaccine is immaterial. And the only thing that it could do would be for it to put us in a terrible position. So, you have to kind of be willing to give up that. And, I similarly was once, even after being guaranteed the right to see a story, was, I don't even know if misquoted is the right word, they were a young reporter, it was her relatively small local blog, and it just didn't, when I read it, it was not, I couldn't even recognize myself in it.
Right.
But it was a small thing, and nothing that I said was wrong, or it was just weird, it was just odd.
It's knowing when to pick your battles.
Yeah, and I was I'm gonna let this one go.
The other part of it, back to your point in terms of that first situation, is that's actually very common, especially if the reporter is talking to someone who is a representative of the foundation. because they'll want that opinion of the community of, well, what does this mean for the community? What does this mean for patients, for, you know, the advocates? And, you know, to Christian's point, you cannot give an opinion. I mean, you can give an opinion as a personal person, but, you know, oftentimes you want to be careful and walk that fine line. And what you can do is say, well, I can't speak specifically about it because I don't know anything really, I'm not a doctor. But what I can say is that, you know, this is a positive step forward for the community, or this is a positive step forward in research and bringing some recognition and light to this, you know, huge unmet need.
It's going back to bridging, bringing it back in.
And I guess I did somewhat say, it was something I think what I kind of said was like, you know, obviously there's a large unmet need, et cetera, you know, so, you know, we're interested in all efforts to prevent and treat this disease, but they want, you know, they want something meaty that's going to be like, we think vaccines suck, or we, you know, or we think fecal
They want the
transplant is
sense of
terrible.
trauma, but if they want it, they'll find other means to get it. It doesn't have to be with you.
Exactly.
I think what we have to be really careful of, what I found, and part of our community education that we do is on the words that we use, like all patients want and every patient wants, and we can't ever speak for everybody. So we have to be very careful to use those kind of words. You did something this morning, Christian, that I very rarely hear, is you talked about, you know, most healthcare professionals don't get up in the morning and want to hurt somebody. Because over and over again you hear, no doctor or nurse want to get up in the morning and want to kill somebody or hurt somebody. Well, I spent a year clipping out magazine articles and newspaper articles about criminal healthcare professionals just to prove that it's true, and I have a notebook on that because of that kind of term. So I think when we talk to the press, we have to be very careful to say, my opinion or our position on this is, and not to speak for everybody.
Right.
They're always going to be looking for the different hook to make their story different. And from, I think it's a little bit sometimes, unfortunately, from an ego standpoint, they're going to be like, what's going to be my big break of the story? And it's like, ooh, maybe this is it, depending on what the outlet is. So just, like I said earlier in the presentation, come from a place of honesty, be authentic, tell your unique story. If you don't know the answer to a question, or if you don't feel comfortable answering it, state it. I don't care how many different approaches a reporter might say to you, like, oh no, your response is going to be fine. Be like, no, I really don't feel comfortable, but I can point you in the right direction of somebody who might be able to answer that.
And that's where Kimberly's advice to always know that nothing is off the record, it comes in and is so important. And I would actually even go a step further than what Kimberly's advice is and say, don't ever assume that anything is off the record. Because I've had situations where I've had clients or patient advocates where the interview's over, they put the notepad away, and they're just sitting there and chatting, and they're talking about stuff and things that were part of that discussion after the interview, off the record, just as, you know, collegial people, ended up in the interview.
I'll also say that's shady of that reporter to do something like that. Like, I would have never, ever have done anything like that. But again, it also comes from like an ethical, moral standpoint of that individual person. You can't judge their moral character. All you can judge is what's they've exposed out to the media.
Well, and sometimes it's an experience thing, you know, because especially when you're dealing with local or regional media reporters, they are oftentimes just starting out, or they're covering 7 different types of topics. So they could one day be talking about like the local beauty pageant, and the next day they could be covering like a health scare, you know. So they don't know the background. So that's why it's part of our responsibility to give them the information that they need.
More times than not, the reporter will come into the office and being like, hey, this is what you're doing today. It's like, perfect example. One day I was reporting how a kitten got stuck up in a tree, and so they had to call the local fire department, but the local affiliates and the community, they love animals, so they're like, yeah, Kim, go report about that kitten stuck in a tree and how this firefighter's a hero. The next day, I was covering a double homicide.
Was it the cat?
No, the cat didn't do it. Now see, that would be national news, okay? They have that hook, that could have been great, no. But as we wrap up this discussion, again, it was just a real pleasure to be able to speak with you guys all about the media, and I hope you found little tidbits that were helpful. If you guys have any other additional questions, I'm more than happy to answer them. And also, too, We didn't have enough time just due to just the time of everything. We want to make sure that we're wrapping things up. We were going to have the opportunity to do a little bit of a breakout, like role play, kind of mock interview. So there are 5 questions that I just would like to state for you all, just to keep in mind when being approached by the media. And I think we might be able to have an opportunity to have these list of questions posted along with the slide deck, I think on the foundation website, if I'm not mistaken. Which, by the way, I just want to give a big shout out and thank you to Anna, who created the slide deck. So thank you so much, Anna. First question, obviously, as what I mentioned before, is knowing what C. diff is. What is C. diff? So in layman's terms, how do you, as a patient advocate, how would you describe what C. diff is? Secondly, how did you know when you had C. diff? So they might ask you about, when did you know that you contracted it? What were your symptoms like? What was that experience like for you, not knowing exactly who to turn to? Or from the receiving end, what was it like for you seeing a loved one experience this and you were completely helpless? How has C. diff impacted your life, either since your initial diagnosis or in general from the receiving end looking out towards a loved one who has had C. diff? Also, too, big, huge factor. Why should people care? It sounds simple, you know, like the who, the what, the where, the when, the why, and how. Why should people care? If there's any question that should be on the forefront of your mind constantly when you're trying to engage the media, it's that one. Why now? Why should people care? You each have your own individual answers to that question. If you're to make anything sharp and crisp, it's the why. And lastly, the gift question. Is there anything like you would like to say in addition before we wrap up this interview? If you are provided with that gift question, hallelujah, that's fantastic. You are encountering and speaking with a really nice reporter that's giving you that opportunity to say the last word. More times than not, you won't have that. If that's the case, you need to create your own gift question. But thank you so much again for your time, and have a great day.
So I think that's our last session, right? Are we? Wow.
That's amazing.
I know.
Really, right on time.
We went into a wormhole and almost got back on time. So I did want to make a note that this a whole tips sheet from Tonic and Sanofi is in. We didn't want to hole punch it because it would have like gotten to the words, but it's in the back of your binders, so that is a great resource. I definitely want to thank the folks at Tonic Media. I say it with love. But yeah, so I really want to thank them. I want to thank Susan for helping us and Sanofi for helping us do this part of the session. I want to thank all of the advocates who volunteered to go back there and be interviewed. And
Are you going to like critique too? Like point out maybe things that we can do better or things that we didn't do?
Was it that kind of an interview, or was it more of an interview to get their stories for like a PSA?
Yeah, we were originally going to do it and then we did it time, but we decided we had a long 2 days, so I don't know who's going to do the editing, but after it's done, I'm sure Christian has your contact information, you can make it available, and hopefully we got a lot of good stuff that might be able to go up on YouTube, and just consider a montage of different people saying how the disease affected them, or what it felt like to have a loved one be affected by this disease and not survive. It's all about raising awareness of the disease.
Yeah. I was just about to say, for the purposes, as Susan just said, those of you that I had the honor and privilege of speaking to, you hit the nail right on the head. Honestly, you were all honest with me. You were authentic. You expressed and explained how it impacted your lives. And that's the type of content that is going to be shown on however type of social media or visual platform that the foundation decides, as well as Susan. Right. So as long as you give consent, then it will be posted. Again, anything that I could recommend would be is to know your key talking points. So have an idea before an interview of exactly the real big messages that you want to state. Right, the fact you didn't have it and the fact you quote unquote winged it, that you really should never do, I mean, major props. That's why I said it was wonderful. But you were coming from a place of honesty, and I felt that, and you felt that, and I couldn't be directed in a better light. So you all did a wonderful job, and just thank you for allowing me to be able to ask you those questions.
Let me answer in another way, which is, so we are going to have stuff edited down. We are going to think, I mean, I haven't even seen any of it yet. I have it transcribed, so it'll probably be a little while before we get there. We do want to redo the PSA. I've been talking to Richard about what the next steps for that stuff are. So we will not put anything out there that you guys don't look at and approve. There's a lot, even if you like assemble, and there will. I'm sorry, my brain just froze. Vicky, who also works in this world, maybe if you guys are super interested and you want to get better at that particular part of advocacy, I think we could find a time to review them and have conversations, or do a Skype together and say well, this is what we thought, this is what we think it can improve. And also, I think I said this yesterday when we were beginning to for us, this is the launch pad. There were about 10 people who couldn't travel to be with us, so we will be working with them as well. We have about 30 people now across the country who want to be advocates in one way or another. So after this, we're going to focus a little bit. And if you filled out the form about what you want to do and how you'd like to do it, make sure that you give that to us with your name on it, because it'll help us follow up with people more individually. But I can imagine us, having 5 or 6 people who really want to focus on being spokespeople, and then, maybe it'll be with Tonic, maybe it'll be with another group where we will continue to help you and coach you and train you and Liam too, because look at that guy.
You work with me.
You do, it's a certain string, sure. I want to also release everybody to go back and enjoy the rest of this beautiful day. It's hard, it's always hard for me to evaluate things, but I feel this met and exceeded my vision and expectations. I hope it met and exceeded your expectations for your participation. I just think, I know how we feel doing this on a regular basis, and I just think that it's incredibly brave for folks like you who have been drafted into C. diff, into this battle to keep going, keep stepping forward. And for those of you who, feel at least relatively C. diff free to still want to be in this to help prevent others from experiencing what you have experienced. I just think it's amazing, and I want you to all get a round of applause. I think there's so much said this last year that I can't sum up properly, but I'm thrilled and excited that you're here. I'm thrilled and excited to be doing this full time now, and I just feel as Helen and I were joking, I think, C. diff came to Brooklyn and we're going to kick C. diff's ass. So I definitely want to thank our sponsors. I want to thank Susan Watkins from Sanity and the folks at Tonic Media who are very generous in doing the media training and helping us film all that stuff. I do want to thank Richard for jumping in at the 12th of November, since I forgot to actually get a videographer until the 12th of November. I really also want to thank all the presenters. I've been doing this now for 5 years, and Helen and Eileen and Lisa and Catherine and I don't want to miss anybody, and Julie Regan with her amazing expertise. You really have had the chance to learn from some of the leaders in patient safety and patient advocacy. And I'm just amazed that we were able to get everybody here. And I also have to give super thanks and shout out to Katie, Carl, and Laura Arngraff, who put up with me for the last month as this was coming closer and closer. Yeah, I know, it's tough. But thanks everybody. So yeah, we're gonna start closing up shop and enjoy the rest of your Saturday. Thanks so much.